Hello everybody and welcome to the latest episode of the Viking Chats, and I am delighted to be joined today by Elaine Penhaul of Lemon and Lime Interiors. Elaine?
Hello.
Hello.
Lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to our little backroom bougie
really
recording
nice.
Meeting webinar room. So
that was for you.
Yes. Was it the cocktail trolley that gave
that was
away?
what really gave it away.
That and the Viking
and the
horns.
Viking helmet. Yes.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It's very us. So look, for those out there living under a rock who don't know who you are and what Lemon and Lime are, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do and your journey to where you are today?
Yeah. So I'm founder of Lemon and Lime Interiors, and we stage premium property right the way across the UK. I started the business by accident in 2015. Well, officially in 2015. I'd been
How do you
staging
start a
for
business
about.
by accident?
I've started a lot of businesses by accident. Seems to be a theme. What happened? Originally I was married for 20 years to a property developer. He left and I ended up in 2008, 2009, so kind of global crash, with a chunk of property which was mixed residential and commercial property and 4 small children to feed. I had no idea how to be a landlord or how to sell property or anything else.
I'm surprised you knew how to do anything for 4 young children to look after.
So I was working as a business coach at the time. I had my own business. I was doing a lot of culture change work, particularly in UK police forces, and suddenly had to get to grips with renting my properties and just learning what worked.
Yeah.
Of course, it was a time when I couldn't sell anything really for any money because there was the bottom had fallen out of the market.
Literally no market. Yeah.
No. And what I found was that the common sense approach of repainting, putting in new kitchens or new bathrooms or carpets where it looked as though it needed it was a really good thing to do. So I was doing that for a little while. I then had a close friend moved to Budapest, and she rented out her family home or their family home in the same village as I was living at the time. And after a couple of years, I happened to drive past. I'd moved out of the village by then, and it had a for sale sign in the garden.
Yeah.
And literally the garden was very overgrown and the house looked really sad.
Yeah.
And I phoned her and I said, "Oh my goodness, Susie, you can't possibly sell it looking like that." I said, "Well, I haven't got time to sort it.
Yeah.
You do it." So I gathered together,
your 4 little children,
my 4 little children who were kind of teenagers by then, and
Perfect.
then mates, and a few cans of paint and a few sticks of furniture that we found in various barns that we had.
I mean, stuff's great fun as kids. I mean, my parents did stuff up. We bought anything from dated to dilapidated homes and kind of lived in the project.
Yeah, pretty much. And we've been living in projects, and so the kids were pretty used to it. So they were very hands-on. We recruited the horse trailer that I had, put furniture in that, delivered that, and that was the winter of 2010, 2011.
Wow, the market was starting to have little sniffs.
Pretty horrible. And the agents achieved £60,000 more than they had ever imagined for it.
Which was probably, I'm guessing, roughly 10% of the overall price?
Yeah, a little bit more than 10% of the overall price. And
that's mega.
Which was absolutely huge. So everybody was delighted.
In a tough market.
In a really tough market, in the winter, country house. So
I'll take every single one of your excuses and I'll cross them off.
Absolutely. Yeah, completely. And what happened then inevitably was that the local agents would phone me up and say, "Elaine, just got this house. Could you come with me and have a look?" And I would go and have a look, and I'd say, "Well, what do you want me to do?" "Well, could you tell the owner that I can't possibly sell it looking like that?" And they would give me a whole list of reasons.
Because they wouldn't want as the agent to be the one saying your home
I don't want to upset anybody.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose the instruction.
Yeah.
So but that was what I started to do, and eventually I thought, they ought to be paying me for this.
I love it. They weren't even offering that yet.
Not to start with. No, not at all. No, they just thought that it was something I might quite like to do. Yeah.
I mean, that said, before we started the call, we did say, beg, steal, borrow.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Get what you can.
Definitely beg, stealing, borrowing. And of course, looking back on it, I mean, for a start, I was business coach at that point. That was what I was doing, and I was learning an awful lot of ways of saying, oh my goodness, you can't possibly sell it looking like that, because of course, all my training in my business coaching world and all my experience said that what I had to do was to sit down and say, so you're going to list your house for sale. So tell me about what your goals are. What are you hoping to achieve by moving? And we would very much go into a business coaching world. Yeah. And so then by landing
kind of using
conversation,
the skill sets you already have, really, completely. In that respect.
Yeah, completely. So then I was able to say, well, what are you looking at? What are you noticing about the things that you're looking at? Where do you think yours measures up to what you really are falling in love with? Yeah. And then it was an easy conversation. And still now, we use a lot of that skill set in the business where people are telling me what they think needs to.
And it's about getting them to break that protective kind of thing of their home. You've decided to sell.
Interestingly, I think that the protective bit around how their home looks, in probably 75% of cases, is a misconception that lives in the head of an estate agent. Likewise, the misconception that people don't want to spend any money on a home that they're moving out of to get the best price. Yeah,
I think it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I think I put all of this in a similar wheelhouse of agent fees, right?
Yeah.
Oh, of course. Any sellers just want to use the agent that sells at the lowest price, because that's how they save the most money. And as you and I know, and every good estate agent out there in the world knows, it's a complete false economy. Quality agents who charge a fair and reasonable rate for their expertise and services achieve higher prices. They have better conversion rates. They have far lower fall throughs of sales. They have shorter sales times. All of the above. And like you said, when people are moving, it's often not this very simple thing of, I just want to sell and buy. For one person, the price is important. The other person, it's not missing out on the dream home that they've finally got their hands on, or it's a family emergency, or whatever it is. There's different pressures in every situation.
Yeah, and I do think that, and it's borne out really by the evidence that we collect, because we've tracked data on where our leads come from, for example, in the business from day one. And in 2015, the first set of data that I did after the first year suggested that less than 1% of our leads were coming directly from a homeowner. Yeah. In 2021, as we came out of COVID, that had gone up to about 30%. Wow. And we put that down to the fact that people were watching more programmes on telly, that there was more stuff on social media, for example, and that was what they were noticing. So they were then coming to us. And we fully expected that would drop back a little bit.
But it's gone up, hasn't it?
But now, 52%, in the last year, 52% of our leads have come from the homeowner direct. And I think that's a number of things. I think partly it is social media, it is trends that people are seeing on television, on, everywhere that they're looking, things like Selling Sunset, Buying London, everybody's talking about staging. We were featured on Britain's Most Expensive Houses, all of those things puts that at the forefront of a seller's mind when they come to sell. And many of those, we know from the conversations that we have, are saying to their estate agent, what can I do about the presentation of my home in order to maximise my sale? However they frame that, but that's the question. And many estate agents are too scared to say, right, you need to paint the walls, you need to change the carpet, we need to sort out the dated decor, you need to tidy up the garden, you need to declutter. Many of them will say, well, maybe you could move the family photos. And that's the end of the conversation. And the intelligent, well-educated seller who is looking out there on social media and seeing that's not going to cut it.
Yeah.
And the next thing that happens is that they're on the end of the phone to us or dropping us a message, or similar businesses, but they're looking for staging. They're not now going to list with the agent that's said to them, I'm going to charge you 1% and your house is beautiful, because they know that that's not going to get them the sale in many, many cases. But there's still a gap between what the estate agent believes the seller's thinking and what the seller believes that they're actually, what the seller is actually thinking. And I don't think that gap, you know, I wrote the last book, How to Sell Your House, to try and bridge that gap. I don't think that gap is yet bridged. I think the two sides are very often having a completely different conversation with a completely different starting point.
I think it comes back to that thing of, you know, agents, if you really know your stuff, own it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
And
it's
the
something
great
we've
agents
always
out
done
there
as a
are
letting
doing
agent.
exactly that.
You know, I mean, look, it's prevalent in lettings and sales. The easiest way to land an instruction is overvalue it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is the first stop for any quality agent, where you refuse to play that game, where you go,
absolutely.
I don't care what Flashy McPants down the street has told you it's worth, or 0.5%.com has told you. I know you're looking about this, and I know that if you price it above this, you won't get the interest that's gonna get you the let or sale that you need. And it starts with that, but like you said, owning that conversation. I mean, you and I have just, we're working on a little side project together. We've just come down from a substantial 2-bed that we're doing a complete refurb on, you know, and that was a really interesting journey, that flat, because we've let them manage that flat for about 20 years, 20 years for the owners, almost the entire time base has been running, and in that time it's always let pretty well, not really had to spend much on it. The development was built about 2 years earlier, so the building and flat itself is only 22 years old, but yeah, you know, we took it to market about 6 to 8 weeks ago, and nothing, got nothing. And it's normally a flat we are swatting people away, because you saw it, massive living room,
it's great,
massive private roof terrace, which is unheard of in central Shoreditch, and nice bedrooms and everything else. But I hadn't actually been up there. I think the last tenants we had in there had been there for like the last 4 years, and I went up there, took one look around, and was like, this has got to come off the market. It's too tired, too dated. But then we started with the gently approach, which was, what's the minimum our client needs to spend to get this back to presentable? And we were like, right, well, obviously a repaint. Yeah. You know, and then we started looking at, right, you know, the kitchen's a bit dated. I mean, maybe we can just kind of tart it up. Like, and by that, I mean, you know, replace the appliances with new ones, maybe put some new door fronts on. Similarly with the bathroom, could we put some new fixtures and fittings in, maybe new carpet in the bedroom? But you know, we've learned from trying to do that in the past, where we were trying to save the client money, because it still wasn't cheap. No. You know, that was still coming in at probably, I can't remember now, I think it was about 25 grand by the time it was all in, the repaint, sorting out the terraces, like I said, fixtures and fittings and door fronts and all this sort of stuff. But then we've done that in the past, and the trouble with that is you start tarting up bits of a property, the bits that looked okay before now all of a sudden look worn and tired because they're now next to a pristine painted wall, or you know, whatever it is. And so we kind of swallowed our tongue a little bit, and we did a more comprehensive tart up quote, and then we did a full refit quote. And actually, I mean, the difference between the two was probably about 15 grand in the end. But we went to the client, you know, it was, look, you've bought this flat, you've had this flat for 22 years, you bought it for 450 grand, it's worth about 1.4 million. You've had 22 years of rental income at about 4 grand a month, so you've done well. And you've only ever, I think, repainted it once, replaced the carpets once, you know, and some bits of furniture and blah, 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 but very little invested on the flat. And we just went, look, given all of that and Renters' Rights Act coming in, you know, this kind of renter tenant-centric marketplace we're coming into, and we were like, look, this is the opportunity now. We do it properly, we reset the property. And, you know, the project is coming in not massively shy of a 6-figure investment, but when you look at it as an overarching asset and what it has returned and what it can continue to return, actually that's a drop in the ocean.
Well, and it is exactly that view on investment that's really important, you know, whether you're letting a property or selling a property, because that's coming up. You've got the capital growth on the property and you've got the rental income. And I know, as an ex-landlord myself, that those void periods are super damaging to your overall income. If you can get a really good tenant in because the apartment is beautiful and they stay for 3, 4, 5 years and you don't have any of the void period, even the odd month while you've got a tenant changing over, then it's absolutely worth it.
Yeah, I mean, historically, because we stopped doing projects for a while. We did projects for quite a while, running an entire internal team, and we would do everything.
Yeah.
And then that got too much. We had a nightmare project, which almost broke me. It was meant to be 6 to 8 weeks, and it was 6 months.
Wow.
And it was, because we always did investment properties because we're a letting agent.
Yeah.
And that was always our focus. We always did investment properties, and that's actually really nice and clean because there isn't that, even when it's a client's previous home, by now most of our clients have been out of it long enough. They've lost that emotional connection. And so it's really purely about the numbers. You know, we didn't have to drill down into the minutiae of the design. We would do a mood board and go, this is the aesthetic we want to create, and this is our budget, and this is our timeline, and these are our financial predictions. And like I said, we stopped doing it in the middle because we took on a private home. A couple who had always rented and then had obviously come into some money, had bought 1,600 square foot lateral loft in a converted Bible printing factory.
Wow.
Which had been horrendously converted in the 1980s and had been chopped and changed in between and all sorts of things. And yeah, they wanted a bougie apartment for a tight budget. And yeah, I mean, I can see your face. All alarm bells ringing. We should have run a mile. But yeah, it was meant to be 6 to 8 weeks. And it broke me. I mean, literally everything. The whole project was a fight. Turned out the boilers in the building had been installed illegally on on a boundary wall. We had the clients cancel the boiler relocation 3 times because they'd spoken to a plumber who said the boiler was fine. It was like, but they're not fine. Every time I would call up the plumber and go, oh, you've these guys called you about this and you said that, and they were like, yeah, and I would be like, did they tell you it was mounted on a boundary wall and that's where the flue went? Oh no, they didn't tell me that. No, that's completely illegal. I said, thank you very much. Could you put that in an email, please? Like, we literally lost a month wrangling, and we had joys because we had to recite that. We had to get freeholder consent because we had to run the flue through the communal parts of the building. It literally at every turn. We had the clients come in and 3 times have us remap the lights. And then when we presented them the bill that had trebled for the lights, they went, oh, you didn't tell us that that was going to cost. It was like,
it's astonishing, isn't it? People want all these changes and then don't believe that it will have any
You thought that was
impact.
Just happening for free, you know. Anyway, but yeah, I'm very proud of what we delivered. It looked incredible, but like I said, it was meant to be a 6 to 8 week project done in our quietest time of year. It ended up being nearly 8 months. It went through peak season. So I would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, go down to the site, meet the builders, spend 2 hours on site with the project before hopping in the car up to here to So we got out, but we've got. I mean, you met Doran and his care at ProCare upstairs. They're fantastic. We've done a few projects with them now, and actually they will quote and run the project, and we oversee the design brief, and we will go in and refine the details and run the project. And so we charge a reduced fee for a design and project management service that kind of sits on top of them, but enables us to do that. So look, one thing you and I agree on, and I think anyone with a flair for design will feel like this, we are enemies of Magnolia.
Magnolia these days reminds me, my grandmother ran a pub when we were kids, so in the 60s and 70s, and walking into a Magnolia house now reminds me of walking into my grandmother's house, where my grandmother's bar, where all the guys were smoking and the walls were
you got that beautiful tar.
I can smell
it now.
Magnolia.
I can feel my trainers sticking to the carpet. But no, being silly aside, you and I, and there's nuance to this.
Yes.
But we are believers that doing something bland and safe and homogenous is the worst thing, really, you can do in property. This kind of like, I want it to be a blank canvas so people can imagine how they'd live here. People's imaginations are appalling. In the by and large. I think like 10-15% of people have the ability to imagine what a space could look like, but the rest, the 85-90%, are, they can't even imagine what the sofa would look like if it's over there, let alone, take that wall down. And
I'm quite grateful for that, because I've built a business out of that.
Yes, got a career.
But these days we're still doing battle with new build developers who think that white walls and grey carpets are going to cut it. And, we need to move away from that. There's a difference between neutral.
What is it with developers and grey?
Because it was very fashionable, and it takes a long time to move away from
you do get
one trend
swathes
into
of
the
the
next
premium
trend.
market on Rightmove, and it's like you've hit a black and white gallery. It is literally all grey carpets, grey furniture, lots of chrome, lots of white.
And it was a trend, kind of pre-COVID, it was definitely a trend. And it takes a long time for some developers to reflect and say, actually, that's not what people are looking for now. We are very, very keen to make sure that whatever we're presenting in terms of an interior that's on a listed property, property that's listed for sale, is directly appealing to the target buyer. And
so
we use a lot of data to drill into that. We were talking earlier off camera about the geodemographic data that we get, and we get that both on the postcode specific on both the seller and the buyer of the homes that we work with. Now, where we've got that for the buyer, then we're able to then take it and say, well, look, the likely buyer for this property from the data that we've got, which is really very good data, the likely buyer is a young professional couple, and what they are currently looking for in trends for interiors are blah blah blah, whatever it is, whether that's colour, whether it's there was a lot of
like you said, we went up to R1, we've done colour drenching and all this sort of stuff, but equally walks into a Georgian
if we're looking at a Georgian rectory that is absolutely beautiful, set in the middle of a very tiny village in the middle of Shropshire, for example, then probably we're not going
and bold colours everywhere probably isn't going to nail it.
Because actually, interestingly, in that type of property, that property had exactly that in the 80s and early 90s. And now in that type of property, sometimes we still see it, and it looks very dated. So what's a trend in central Shoreditch, for example?
Yes.
In the middle of Ludlow, is going to,
feel very
a
out.
Georgian
Yeah.
rectory, is going to feel very off kilter.
Yeah.
So it's understanding geography, it's understanding the marketplace, it's understanding the trends that are related to the client and also to the property type, and that's really important. We spend a lot of time in that.
This data-led approach, because you and I were at the Voice of the Agent conference a couple of weeks ago, with Unchained Marketing, which was great. And it's this, Simon and his team, and also a lot of the partners there are desperately trying to wake the property industry up, and particularly the agency industry, to this data-led approach. What's been fascinating in our conversation is you keep on talking about the data tells us this, the data tells us that, 52, from 14% to 33% to 52%, whatever it was. I can think of very few estate agents or letting agents that could sit and have a chat with me like this and have data at their fingertips like that, and who reference a data source. Oh, we get this set of data from here, and we get this set of data from that. And when you talk about it, it's so obvious that we should be doing this. We talk about the value of data, and data is your company's gold, whatever it is. But A, you've got your own data, but like you said, B, understanding, and like you said, there's no point stylizing a property if you don't stylize it for your typical or predominant buyer.
We're not interior designers. We're not doing what we do to make it beautiful for the person that's living there. We're not. Well,
you are interior designers, but with an objective.
Well, we're not. My background, I'm a mathematician.
Yeah.
My degree's in maths. I'm absolutely straight down the line, data driven from.
And this is why.
Day one. And what I see.
So this is already explaining quite a bit.
What I see in property is. Beauty is a mathematical concept.
Yeah.
So beauty is symmetry. Colour is absolutely a mathematical concept in terms of percentages. The whole thing, balance, proportion, they're all mathematical concepts. And we are using mathematical concepts with the data to say, these are the people. And then, of course, I have designers
the agents you work
working
with
for
must
me.
be fascinated in this data, because surely
The agents who work
they're
with me
going,
look at me
hold
like I'm
on,
mad.
you know that 80% of our buyers are going to be this kind of profile of person, that's who you stylize it towards. I mean, as an agent, I would want to know that data so I could stylize our marketing towards that demographic. Like, are they a horse and hound person? Do we need to try and get this as a PR property feature in there? Or
I've offered to take real live horses to stage American barns,
Amazing.
for those type of properties. But I think what's really, really fascinating is that we've collected data obsessively, some would say, from day one of the business because of my background. And so I always knew, staging wasn't a trend. It wasn't something that agents did or homeowners did when I started the business. And we've done
I've stumbled across companies that have done it, but it does seem quite nichey.
It was
very design-led.
And people believe it's very design-led, but we've done a huge amount of education. I've done a huge amount of education in the UK property market, that we're using a property marketing tool, and as a marketing tool, and from the conversations with Simon, marketing should be data-led, and therefore we've had to be data-led. So we've got data for every single property that we've ever touched. We know how much it costs to stage it, how much it costs to get it ready for market, what it had been listed at pre-staging, if it had in fact been listed, or what the valuation was pre-staging, what the eventually the accepted offer was. We did a long-term study earlier this year with using data from 20 EA against our data over 9 years. It was 9 years because we had 10 years of data. 20 EA, bless them, had 9 years of comparable data. So we then were able to say that the properties that we've staged across that 9-year period are 5 times more likely to sell at asking price.
Wow.
right the way across original asking
that's a
price.
rather nice stat to open with.
They're 18% more likely to go over asking, and they are 7 times less likely to go under asking.
Wow.
Now, if you compare, so the average under asking, the average selling price from 20EA is something like 96.8%. Our average sale price across every property that we've touched in that time period is 103%.
Wow.
Which is, so now you've got almost 7% to play with
huge.
in the staging. And the staging cost is, a big staging cost would be 1.5%, and where we're fully furnishing.
Yeah.
You've still got
5.5% in there. I mean, that's a good. That's a good margin, even with a good agent in there at 2.5%.
Unfortunately, what we're up against is agents, and there are many good agents out there. We work with some really, really super agents, but there are also agents of this kind of ilk who don't really understand their own value, and so they can't put a value on what we do for their client because they're already struggling to get to a 1% fee.
Yeah.
So where I come in and say, well, it might cost, if it's a really good declutter and a style before photos and ready for viewings, it might cost 0.25% of asking, or it might cost a couple of grand, for example. Or where we're fully furnishing something that is of a sensible sized floor plan, it might cost 1.5%. That's more than my fee. I can't possibly talk about that. Some of our clients spend more on dinner, for a group of friends than we're talking about for their
unfortunately there is still this huge hang up with agents about the value they deliver. But again, we bring it back to data. It's, they don't discuss it internally to reassure themselves as a business of the results that they deliver for their clients. They certainly aren't able to convey that to the clients in any way other than trust me, I'm an estate agent. And I think that's what's really fascinating. The conference, when we were at the Voice of the Agent conference the other week, you can't argue with anything that's being said there. I mean, we had everyone there from Heather and Street and Ben at GeoCale to, the CEOs of, who do we have there? Experian, YouGov.
Everybody.
And everything was naturally data focused, data led. But even as I am no data scientist or mathematician, but I am a business person and I do like logic and indisputable facts. And you just can't argue with the logic and the value to it. And yet, as an industry, we do it so little. I mean, we've always had a grasp on certain metrics, like, we know what our client retention is, and we know where our referrals come from, and we know what our average tenancies are, and voids and rent arrears and all this sort of stuff. Leads, we've always been pretty focused on leads and business generation in terms of applicant inquiries with the portals, which led us to take a primarily data-led approach to leave Rightmove 5 years ago. But that wasn't a knee-jerk. We did it in a very emotive way at the time, because it was a reaction to their initial COVID response, which I'm actually grateful for. But because the data had been nudging us, we'd been considering leaving for 3 or 4 years beforehand, because we were 90% confident that our data told us everything would be hunky dory. But we still needed that nudge. But it was fascinating sitting in that conference. None of us do it enough. I always, talking about Glorious Rightmove, I always bemoan the amount of agents I've spoken to over the years and still now who bemoan the cost. Can't believe they put the prices up again, blah, blah, blah. And yet I can count on one hand the amount of agents who I've had that conversation with where I've gone, cool, what do you spend and what does it generate? And they can't answer that question.
No.
And they don't have the stats in terms of how that compares to other portals if they use them, and what that, you know, does it bring them clients, and if not, where's their client acquisition from? And, you know, so I've always found that fairly basic, but, you know, as I've said to you, as I've told you, straight off the back of this, I'm really excited because we are going into a big 2 or 3 hour meeting with Simon Ledbetter and his team from Unchained. I think we've got 2 or 3 of the team down because we've paid them to do a full in-depth audit of Base and all of our marketing channels, all of our marketing activity. So everything from our brand values and our brand message to our website, our socials, our newsletter, everything we do. We've given them all of our client data, our historical data, so they're doing profiling for us. You know, and I'm delighted that we're doing this now, but I'm bewildered that we've left it 20 years to get to this point, to be like, right, come on, marketing, stop willy-nillying it, and let's actually apply some science and some logic and some data and analytics rather than just guesswork.
I think now we have that level of data at our fingertips. You know, property, I love being in the property world. You know, I've worked in a lot of different industries over my long and very patchy career. You know, what I really love about property is the amount of data that we've got at our fingertips. If I want to know a particular fact, I pick up the phone to one of the people, you know, either 20EA or Rightmove or whoever it happens to be, and say, this is what I need. How quickly can you get it to me? And they go, oh yeah, okay, we'll pop it over this afternoon. And I'm going, whoa, amazing. So we've got the comparative data for our internal data now as well, which is fantastic. And we can put out all of that messaging. I think that, you know, it would be brutal to look back on 20 years of marketing and say we didn't do this. I think that they're probably, the ability to do what we're doing now didn't exist.
I mean, the access, no, you're right. 20 years ago, there wasn't the availability of the data, and what was there was incredibly more expensive because we've taken a more open attitude to data and how it's used and leveraged, and what small businesses have access to now is on par with your corporates 20, 30 years ago. The unique access that they had because of their budget is now afforded to most of us. So no, I think you're fair. I mean, we're on such a journey with marketing that, you know, we started this kind of tail end of 23 really, because we'd made this decision that it was time for us to kind of change gears a little bit. We didn't go through a rebrand, but we knew we wanted to build a new website. We wanted to absolutely commit to video. But we also knew, as with all things in marketing, you know, one essential part of it is consistency. It's being like, right, we are going to produce X amount across all of our channels, week in, week out. Now, there's obviously going to be the odd thing that drops in and out, but our first mission was consistency. So we built our new website, but I wouldn't have made this investment. We wouldn't have made this investment with Unchained a year ago because I don't think we were ready. No. You know, there's no point, because we have done this in the past. We have paid for consultants and experts to do X, Y, Z, and then we get this fantastic, insightful report, and then it just kind of goes in a drawer and it doesn't get action. So we needed to be in a place where we were producing what is required. It just needs refinement. So we've spent a year building that consistency, and now hopefully, you know, what we're going to hear later today is a lot of refinements to that. You need to tweak this, you need to think about that, you need to produce it like that, and adjust keywords here, and, you know, whatever it is, and hopefully it's going to be a bit more refinement. You know, and I'm really excited to work with Simon and his team. You know, we're going to do it in phases. We're going to look to see what we can deliver internally first, which is the great thing from their reports. They give you a whole list of, you know, here's 3 months worth of work or 6 months of work of stuff you guys can do yourself. So we're going to start with that, and then hopefully beyond that start to engage Simon and his team in delivering elements of that. But I'm super excited because we've like I said, we know our internal system data. Anne and I know this business inside out in terms of, monthly generation and profit and loss. And like I said, general client retention data and arrears and blah, 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 all the kind of big ticket items. But we've never developed that marketing knowledge, that marketing insight and that proper strategy on how we want to build and grow the business from there, and also how we want to improve results. And I think that's massively something for agents at the moment is to we've got to all get better. And the agents that you are seeing doing really well at the moment, your By Designs, your Chartwell Nobles, your Avocado Properties, your Locations, Swindon Home Finders, JDG, they are all taking a data-led approach. They are all driving. Yes, they have instincts and ideas, but it is fundamentally driven by data.
And it's interesting as well. We talked earlier about value, and I think the agents that can talk about value as opposed to cost are really the ones who these days are succeeding in getting good fees for what they're doing, but fair fees for what they're doing, because they'll talk about adding value into what they're bringing. So their marketing, they can evidence, the difference that preparing properly, so the presentation side will make, the difference that really great photos or really great video is going to make to that particular
I think it tells you
property.
a lot about a client, right? It tells you a lot about a client. I mean, we closed our sales department at Base 5 years ago because it was always kind of a bit of an afterthought to our lettings and property management. We never really got that structure there. But one of the things I always found difficult was this whole no win, no sale, no fee attitude with this massive asset. How wishy-washy people could be. And I think for agents, you invest so much time, energy and resources finding that client, wooing that client, getting that property on, putting it on the market, that, really you want to be sure that they are as committed and serious as possible. And I think what's really interesting is, there are things like your service, like blended fees. I think that's why blended fees is doing really well right now. It's that buy-in, right? If a client is willing to put down 1, 2, 3, 4 grand on presenting the space right in person, paying for quality marketing assets, then, the likelihood is if they're splashing 5 grand out up front, they're pretty freaking serious about getting that property sold. Whereas the person who absolutely won't lay a penny out up front and is looking for a 1% agent, no wonder those agents are seeing a higher percentage of fall throughs and everything else, because there's no buying from the client. And I think so agents need to kind of shake up their psychology with this stuff of being like, yes, there may be an added element of complexity of saying, look, this is what we do, but we work with Lemon and Lime, and this is what they can do with us, and we work with whoever else. Maybe you might work with a marketing partner for premium content like drone footage and stuff. Yes, it's less simple than just walking in and go, we sell houses for 1%. But if you can sit there and pitch your justified fair fee and justify 2 other services that cost, and you've got a client going, great, your data tells me this is absolutely what I should be doing, so I'll spend 3 there and an extra grand on your marketing and £1 grand to get it sale ready, and off we go. The experience you're going to have with that client, I mean, you're going to be taking that property to market in the best possible way, so you should get the best outcome from your viewings, and you've got a committed client who's willing to spend money up front. So I think for agents, it's getting away from this volume, right? Whenever you build a business on volume, I think you're constantly in that hamster wheel of chasing the next listing just to keep the books full and to keep that kind of funnel of price reductions and everything else. rolling through, but actually you can have a much calmer business by being content with doing less volume, less instructions, but at better fees and at considerably better conversion rates.
Yeah.
To the benefit of everyone, really. The office environment, clients, your staff, your your own mental health, everything. I think it's it's
and
a
I
more
think certainly
considered.
that's contributing, isn't it, to the rise of the self-employed agent and through the different self-employed models, many of whom we work with, and they're great. That we tend not to work really with the volume agents simply because they don't have the time to consider it, and certainly many of them, not all of them, but many of them are not brave enough to pitch a 1% fee. Never mind,
they're pressured with I talk about this a lot.
KPIs that they have.
They're pressured with very
office.
simple KPIs, or very specific KPIs, and anything
which don't
outside
lend
of that.
themselves to what we bring.
So look, we're coming towards the end of this. I did want to touch on one thing, and I loved your response to this at the Voice of the Agent conference, so you've probably already guessed what I'm going to ask you. So, Elaine, AI does fabulous things with photos nowadays. Why do agents or vendors or landlords need an in-person service where they can just shove a photo into Gemini and go give it a modern minimalist dress with some mid-century artwork on the walls? And
Well, as I quoted, one of my team had said, and as I quoted at the Voice of the Agent, that doing virtual staging or AI staging is like creating the most amazing trailer for a really shit movie.
Brilliant. I love that.
It has its place, don't get me wrong, it absolutely has its place.
Look,
So
for new builds, to imagine
off-plan new builds.
Yes, exactly. That's what I meant.
Once it's complete, it needs the furniture in. For off-plan new builds to try and sell off-plan, it's great. For lower end properties, perhaps student lets, or for lettings in particular, where it's lower end, then absolutely has its place. So the tenant's still in situ, you're trying to avoid having an empty period. Then getting rid of the stuff virtually and putting in.
Oh no, we've done it. We've got unfurnished flats where as we know, the misconception is that unfurnished flats look bigger, but as we know, they are typically actually perceived smaller because people imagine their furniture bigger and everything else.
Imagine where the bed's going
we've done CGI styling, furnishing to help people understand the size of a space and what it might look like. We actually did one recently where we did a light refurbishment, an uplift on an apartment, which included us getting rid of all of the very tired furniture in the space. But what we always say to our landlords is that don't rush out and buy stuff. So what we did with that is we work with Loft with their furnishings, and we every now and then we work with the guys at DCTR, Tom and his fabulous team, and they've got a little partnership together where they've got a lot of Loft furniture CGI. So what was great there was we pre-agreed a furnishing package with the landlord if we needed to furnish it. We had DCTR, Tom and his team style the space with the furniture that we pre-selected. I mean, there was a few items they didn't have, but largely. So we could go, look, and our marketing was, here it is unfurnished, as it looks. Here it is with the proposed furniture in it. And that was great, because again, it gave tenants, and in rentals, I think particularly, there is, and often for very good reason, a natural distrust with tenants of what they see online. Half the time the photos are 10 years old and it's not an accurate representation of what the flat looks like. But again, furnishings in rentals, I think this has got to be the bane of my life. I've lost track of over the years how many times I've had heated debates with landlords about furniture. They'll buy an 850 grand flat and then they'll refuse to spend more than £1,500 furnishing it. It's like, are you mad? They go and get the cheapest divan beds and Argos sofas and all this sort of stuff. And look, again, it comes back to that thing of understand your market, right? Why would you buy an asset at that value? Our advocacy was typically clients should look at around 1% would be ideal budget spend to fully, if you're doing curtains and everything else, it kind of keeps it in keeping. But it's more often than not a very difficult sell on that one. But I think, the CGI thing, like you said, it has its place. Off-plan sales, absolutely. Even to a certain extent, an open market. You have your beautiful show home that teams like you dress. But again, although you'll understand 80% of the buyer, there will be that 20% that will want something different. I think the great thing now is, again, particularly with new builds, they've got so much data and drawings and system and data around those that they can, you can present that to buyers and go, great, put it in Egyptian, make the walls Egyptian cotton and make the bathroom aquamarine blue and, style it in mid-century furniture. It can help those unimaginative buyers that we talked about imagine the space quickly and easily transformed into how they would live in it. But like you said, in terms of, you've got to be really careful about, you create this online perfect property and then they walk in and literally you photoshopped everything. There's wallpaper peeling and
it's not a good way to get a sale if the first emotion someone has as they walk through the threshold is disappointment. It really isn't. That's not going to lead to a high offer quickly.
No. Here's what you could have won.
Yes, here's what you could have won, but look what it's actually like.
So
I think the real thing, and it doesn't matter how far we go down the AI rabbit hole, the human bit will become increasingly important, and creating an emotional connection will become increasingly important, not less important, because more and more it's easier to do more and more with the AI tools. And as we become very desensitized to all of that, then the minute we walk into something that's real and we can look and feel and touch and smell, you go, wow, I feel at home here. And that will become really, really critical as we move forwards into this AI world.
And again, like I said, in lettings, a huge amount in lettings is trust. The reality of the matter is, and this is why we're going through this huge change with the Renters' Rights Act going through now, is tenants have for too long been treated very poorly in the rental market, and there is an seemingly infinite list of stories of tenants who have either seen something online and rented it based on what they've seen online, only to walk in to find, Christ, it's not even the same property they saw online. It's, they've used photos of a flat next door. Or, they go to see a property and I said what they see doesn't match what they see online. I mean, one of the things I find hilarious, one of the most common comments we get on our viewings is, oh my God, it looks exactly like it does online. It's like, yeah?
That's what you want. That's a good thing.
Shouldn't be a surprise. But I mean, we definitely get that. We talk to people, and people will make comment on that, be like, oh, not your experience. No, like I said, some agents will be using photos they took 10 years ago. The furniture's changed since then, the property's, whatever else. And equally, you've got those tenants who come and see stuff and they ask for X, Y, Z to be done or changed, or can we have a more modern sofa? And lo and behold, move-in day comes around and the works haven't been done, or they've been done poorly, or that modern sofa is the cheapest one, IKEA is the cheapest one from the IKEA line, or, whatever it is. And at best, they're disappointed, and at worst, they've been lied to. And so I think, in lettings, trust is such an important thing, and it's something we've taken a lot of time. Like the last few years ago, we implemented a few rules. Like we used to try and stack our tenancies back to back because all landlords talk about voids, can't have voids. And I think our average void was something like 3 days. But the trouble was we kept having this problem of properties being handed back in a condition we weren't aware of.
Yeah.
Because the tenants had their own furniture until they remove it. You don't know what you're dealing with, or whatever it is. And we just had no time between to solve that. So we were having tenants who were promised XYZ, and through no fault of our own, were moving in and
it wasn't.
We'd kind of done 80% of what we said, but there were 3 new things, and our attitude was we would obviously give the tenants a heads up. We'd say, look, tenants have literally just moved out this morning. This is a day or 2 before the tenants move in. We've discovered XYZ. We've got contractors lined up for Monday, but not what people want. People don't want to start their tenancy. They want to move in and unpack. They don't want to move in and have to leave everything in boxes because you've got contractors coming in 5 days' time.
And I think it's a bit like I talk about in sales, that where we're doing things for the sales market, that these days people want to go and look at a property or move into a property in the case of a rented property, but they want to go and view a property. And as they step across the threshold, they want to stick on their video and they want to be video calling their friends or their family and say, wow, look at this.
Yeah.
And what they want is that affirmation from their friends and family that they're doing a great thing, that it's money well spent because it's expensive.
Exactly.
Whether you're renting or buying, it's expensive. And people want that affirmation. And if they're going around a really tatty flat with the damp in the corners and the, and the mouldy carpet and,
the bike handlebar scrapes down the hallway walls.
Or they're walking into a property that is super cluttered with an owner's belongings, the minute that they walk through the door, that's not giving them that wow. And that's what you create in your lettings as you get properties ready, in between tenants, and it's what we're creating in the visuals for the marketing, but we're creating it in real life as well as so that people can walk in.
Well, we mandate 5 working days between tenancy transitions now, so we've got time.
So you've got time.
So if it's small stuff, it's fine, and if it's big stuff, we've hopefully still got time to get it sorted and done.
Yeah.
So that because you can't make a second first impression.
No.
And so tenants will have 3 impressions with your company. That the first, when they contact you initially, and what that interaction is like, registering and booking and viewings, what that interaction is like at the viewing, what's the person like who they meet, does the property match their expectations or hopefully exceed them, etc., etc. And then you've got that third impression, and this is the one that really matters, is the one where they walk in their home for the first time. Yeah,
and that home is really important. It's not
particularly in lettings. It's agents don't talk enough about home.
No, you're right.
The language and disparity towards tenants is still really poor. I mean, we've kind of jumped on the back of Paramount Properties' attitude to language. I will very happily give them credit that I loved their adoption of the monikers of owner and resident as opposed to landlord and tenant. And I still use landlord and tenant in conversations because contextually that's how most people idealise with them. But within our business, we try our utmost to use this language of owners and residents and talking about home, because that's exactly what it is. And we live in a society now where people are going to rent. More people are going to rent for more of their lives, and there's going to be a growing segment of our society that is going to rent for the entirety of their lives. And so we can't keep talking about property and renting and tenants. It has to be about home, and how you feel in that space and how that space makes you feel. And like I said, that moment of when you move into your home and the property is exactly as you expected it to be when you walk in that door, or better, and there's that nice, maybe there's that nice little surprise there or whatever it is. But, you, like I said, you don't get to make that first impression again. And if that tenant walks in and there's things not been fixed and things that you promised would be done that haven't, that you're going to spend months or years winning that trust back and scrambling to get that all done. And it's painful. Well, listen, we have run out of time, as is often the case in these situations. but I've absolutely loved our chat today.
Been lovely to come and talk to you. Thank you
And
for
I'm
having
really
me.
looking forward to our little project we're doing together next week and sharing some details about that as well. So I'm really looking forward to that. So look, if you have enjoyed our chat today, do please find out more about Lemon Lime Interiors. Go on their website. I think I'm right in saying, Elaine, you've now got a couple of kind of split off like franchise.
So yeah, we've
operations.
just started to franchise so that we can do what we do, and it becomes more economically viable for more people who are remote from where we are in the Midlands. So we touch the whole country, but having people in Kent, Wales and Devon, which the first ones, just make what we do more viable.
So if you're an agent or a developer looking to run a more successful sales operation, have a chat with Elaine or her team, and dig into the data. Take a data-led approach to understand that better. If you found our conversations interesting today about data, reach out to Unchained. They're kind of, I consider the pantheons of kind of the overarching view of data and marketing and analytics. We've talked about 20EA today as well. And yeah, lots of fascinating things, but reach out to either of us. But a data-led approach can't help. And yeah, let's build and create homes that inspire passion, right? It's that thing. If you don't want 10 people who are kind of interested, what you really want is 3 people who absolutely fall in love with the property, because that's where the magic happens. That's where everything kind of comes together. Elaine, thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure.
And,
thank you for having me.
Yeah, see you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.